Hey, what's going on, everybody? I am Fibs and Profits, and I know it's been a while. I think I took like a 2 week hiatus from some videos, just some family volleyball we were doing. What I did want to do is just review some of the trades for this week. I am going to be going flat. I'm actually, I just closed out of all remaining positions going into this final New York session before the US election results, and ultimately it's just to protect my capital. But I did want to go over and touch up on ideally what I was looking at, what we were looking at to start the week. The first one I wanted to talk about was Euro GBP. This was actually just a really easy setup. Um, I know on the Sunday analysis call, one of the traders in our group, Sam, called this out, and ideally, I agreed 100% with it. Ultimately, we were just following bearish structure with Euro GBP, and when we dive into it, the this last up candle, this 15-minute candle, is ideally what we were looking for when price created a new low. If we just go off of, this was previous low. I'll move that out of the way. Okay, previous low. This is the next high, right? Now this is our previous low, next high. And ultimately from there, we shot down and made a new low. So as we created this ideally was the area I was looking at, was this 15-minute candle right there. And ultimately we got a really nice reaction during the London Open. This happened right at about 15 minutes prior to London Open. London candle came in, wicked, and we just tore down. So ideally what I was looking for was to close the Sunday gap. And I was targeting the 80 level. 89.80 was my target level. You could see we ultimately came through that. And it was a nice little R to R, right? A little, almost a 13, almost a 12 and a half to 1. So stop loss was about 5 pips. It was a 4 pipette spread on my broker, just covering above this high right here. Ultimately is where I wanted to stay off of. Time wise in this trade wasn't very long. To this area right here was only about 5 hours to get to my final take profit. Took about, we'll say, 18 hours. So it was a little more than an intraday move, but all in all, it was a nice little R to R. Okay. The next setup I was looking at was odd NZD, right? This was the main one I was looking at, and I'll pull up my odd NZD. Here it is right here. So I talked about this on Sunday in the Zoom call we were doing. And ultimately, let me just pull this up. We'll open it up here. Okay. So ideally, this was Sunday, what the market looked like. And ideally, what I wanted to see happen, right, was your typical type 1 schematic in accumulation. All right. I wanted to see us trade back down to the range, grab all of this liquidity that was sitting here by creating our spring. Wait for whatever. I'd have to wait for whatever happened in here. Okay. And ultimately I'd like to see us show that willingness to get above whatever structure we created in here, and then take a test. Right, so my entry would be off the test, stop loss just below the spring. That's what ideally I was looking at. All right. Okay. So yeah, ideally, I wanted to see that spring. We were going to take a test. This is going to be the entry, stop loss below whatever spring was created, and we are going to take this up and out of the range. Okay. So that's ideally what I was looking to see happen. Now market opened, and you can see what I ended up doing was how we opened isn't ideally um, what I wanted to trade. So I looked at it at a bigger view, right? This is on the 5 minute. Um, Ended up going to the 1 hour. And you can see we had one area of preliminary support, a second area of preliminary support, a third area of preliminary support. And then from there, we ultimately started getting into our first change of character, right? That selling climax to the automatic rally back down to a secondary test. So it was pretty evident that you can start to see accumulation starting to build. Um, Going into November 1st, right? Going into the first around Asian session, my time, we created that up thrust action, right? We traded above the trading range momentarily and then immediately started to trade back down. So for this to be accurate, what I wanted to see was one of two things. I wanted to see obviously a type 1 or a type 2 schematic play out. From there, you can see these are the two scenarios, right? So scenario A was where we're at right now. If we do not break above this high and create a new high, then what I needed to see was a spring. I needed us to take below here, right? Come up, test, and then go higher. All right. If that wasn't going to happen, the only other play I was going to have was a break above to create a new high. Okay. And then what I was targeting was this 5 minute open. There's a 5 minute candle in here, and I think I do have a picture of it going lower. But that 5 minute candle is what I want to see us come trade back into and then go up, and only if we break above this structure here. Okay, so that was the play. All right. So obviously the next step, right, again, is you could start to see the beginning of us breaking out, right? So we did break above, and ultimately I set the order. Once that candle closed above, I set the order and I went to bed. All right, and then this is ultimately how I woke up. All right, so I did take partials. I closed out half of my position right around here at actually at 60 at 0.6700 flat. Okay, that nice hold number right above here is where I closed out half of the position. You can see where it was at currently was almost a 14-1. All right. So I took a 1-7 and pocketed it in and then held on to the remaining. All right. But it was a really nice trade, and I'll dive in and show you exactly what I saw. All right. So when we get into the 5 minute candle, all right, when we get into this 5 minute candle, all right, you could see this is the candle I was looking at. Okay, this is the candle I was looking at. All right, we did have a small imbalance created. Okay, we did have a small imbalance created by this up wick and then this down wick. I wanted to go off of this 5 minute open, stops just below these wicks right here. Okay, just below those wicks right there. So ultimately, we did get the move. Okay, we did get the move that I was looking for, and you'll see where. All right, and you'll see my confirmations as to what I needed in this trade. All right, let's just go to the 30 minute. It's a little easier. Okay, so from here, all right, what I wanted to see was us break above this structure. If that broke above the structure, my order was ultimately validated. All right, so here's the validation. We did close above. We did create a new high, right? Just going off of structure. You can see bearish structure, right? This is ultimately where we started to change our character. We made a higher high. I'm sorry, we made a change of character in this point here when we made the higher high here off of this previous structure. Okay, that's where I wanted to see. So in order for this trade to be validated, we could not drop below this low. And ultimately, that's where my stop loss was right here. All right, so this is our new higher high, our higher low, and then our higher high. So from there, it was pretty simple just to take that entry off that 5 minute candle. And ultimately, that is what we want to see. All right, we'll just go to present time, but that's ultimately the reaction I want to see. I want to see a quick dip down into it and then off to the races we go. All right. So the trade overall is sitting currently at about a 1 to 18. It was at one point a 1 to 19. Um, and that's honestly what this strategy is all about. When you incorporate Wyckoff theory, when you incorporate smart money concepts, it's a pretty simple strategy. All right. So that was AN. The only other trade that I took was on the S&P 500, and to talk about that one, we'll talk about US 30 first. So yesterday, I was looking at a potential opportunity off US 30 at this 30-minute candle, and if I bring it up, okay, yeah, so you could see this was yesterday, November 2nd, 9:21. This was pre-market. Ideally, what I was looking for was for us to dip down into this 30-minute candle and then go higher. Um, we did fall short of that. You can see, right? We did fall short of that right here. Okay. However, that same 30-minute candle on the S&P 500 did get tapped. Okay. And that's what I wanted to get. All right. That's what I wanted to get. It actually, I entered into this trade yesterday at about 1 p.m. Eastern, my time. And when we look at it, the schematic was just on point. All right. Again, what were we looking for, right? The indices, if I ever am able to enter off a schematic, especially a type 2 schematic, I'll do it. All right. Now, going into it, we did have our first change of character, automatic upthrust action that automatically came down into the trading range. We did create a secondary test in B that traded past the 50% mark of the trading range. And then we did that one last dip into liquidity, right? This spring did drop below the STNB. All right. And then from there, this is our previous structure. So price showed that willingness. This came down into the test, came down into a 5-minute candle. And ultimately, you can see the imbalance created just off of this 30-minute. All right. We did have some imbalance here, right? That price did dip back into. All right. And then from there, as we traded out of the trading range as a sign of strength, this would be our last point of support. And just by looking at, without really diving into the candle, but we can see this entire range in here, okay, as a demand zone, right? You could see a lot of buying happens, a lot of buying, a lot of buying, a lot of buying, a lot of buying, and a lot of buying. Okay. So it was only it was a logical area. So when I was looking for a potential area to buy into, this area definitely was drawn to my attention. And then of course that 30-minute candle. Now I could have had a smaller stop loss. You could see currently I'm sitting at about a 10 to 1. Had I taken 50% of that candle, right, it would have almost ideally it would have doubled my R to R. All right. Now I didn't do that because I wanted to get filled. All right. Obviously, you saw the US 30 did not come down far enough for me to get the entry in US 30. So I didn't want to miss the trade. So I took it off of the 30-minute open. Right. If you're looking at it, you can always, especially when you trade smart money, you know that if your bias is correct and the candle that you've identified is correct, that 100% of the time price will come to mitigate out of that candle at the open. I can't say with absolute certainty that it'll come to the 50% mark. All right. So anyway, we took it off. This was the 1:30 p.m. Entry yesterday, and then price just never came back from there. All right. Traded well up. I actually took profit at 33.80. Um, there was a slight imbalance in this area right here. There was also a small market gap, okay, right in this area from the 4 to 4:30 candle when the crossover happened on October 27th. So where I was personally looking was, to take profit at 33.80, a nice little 10 to 1, and I was happy with it. All right. So those are the three trades I've pretty much taken this week. The other one that I did take was on Bitcoin. And let me just see if I have it on here. No. All right. Let me pull it up here. So Bitcoin, I've been on a roll lately. I have, past profits do not ensure or guarantee future results. But I'll tell you right now, like I'm up in the month of October, I took 15 trades on my crypto account only. And of those 15 trades, I had 7 break evens, 3 losses. And of course, that leaves 6 wins. And with that, I was up over 18% by risking a quarter of a percent. So, yeah, I definitely, uh, and honestly, in October, the only thing I've traded was Bitcoin. I did take one XRP trade that ended up hitting break even, but that was pretty much it. Just going through our Bitcoin here real quick. I'm looking for buys, right? You can see structure, right? We're just following structure, right? Creating new highs. Price did come into 50% of the H2, took off, made a new high. All right. So with that said, um, what I was looking for was my next potential buy. Okay. So when price did have, there was a morning, I think it was, yeah, November 2nd, right? November 2nd, we just had a nice little drop. It was like a 1.5% drop. We came into this trend line, and I'll show you the trend line, which ultimately I think is going to get just obliterated. I already took some profits off the buy I'm in. But my entry was off this 5-minute candle, and I'm gonna kind of give you an idea of what I was looking at. So yeah, I took off that 5-minute candle, and ultimately it's this 5-minute candle right here. Okay, this is that 5-minute candle. You could see we did break above, right? We did break above this structure right here. We came right back down and touched it during London session last night, and immediately had a nice little rise on it. Okay. Stop loss on here was just below the wick, which was 95 pips. All right. And I was hoping to target 14,200. All right. That's my ultimate goal where I'd like to take it. All right. You could see there's the entry right here. But ultimately, this trend line where we have 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch, and now 4 and 5 will get obliterated. So ideally, I was trying to get to 14,200, which would have been about a 9, but we'll call it a 9-1. All right. On crypto, that's pretty good. I really don't get the big runs on crypto like I do on currencies. But yeah, so 9-1, I was up pretty significantly. I have an alert set right above here, this high. If we do take this high is where I'm ultimately going to take profits, right? So we did get up to 13,000 like 8 and change today. And I'll kind of go over that, and I'll show you where I closed out. But yeah, immediately this was a nice reaction. When I woke up, I was up almost 300 pips on this off a 95 pip, risk. So I did, ultimately get a nice reaction off of that. And you can see we did get up to 13,800. It was actually like 798. So I did go and close out 3/4 of my position here, right at 495 pips, right as we took this high. And ultimately, I am looking to see what happens from here. Whether the election is going to create any major moves. One of the areas I was looking was, I believe it was on a 5-minute. Yeah, this 5-minute candle right here is where I'm ultimately looking for another buy. It's right around the 88.6. It looks like from here. Yeah, look at that. It is very near to the 88.6, which would be one of the more premium retracement areas I'd like to buy from. But I'm a little leery, especially with the election results. So either, regardless, this was still a pretty nice little move, risking, this is about a 1 to 5 off of that 5-minute. Pretty nice move. Like I said, I don't trust this trend line. We do have a lot of major imbalance to the downside that we potentially will see the drop. All right. And segueing right into XRP, right? I did take a buy the other day off XRP off a 15-minute candle right in here. Ended up breaking even, and you can just see we're just following trend, right? Until we take this high here, I'm not going to be looking for buys. We're slowly just pulling back. Whether this is a complex pullback to go higher, ultimately we had some liquidity here. This was that spring before taking off. So I am curious to see, we have dropped below here. Just curious to see when we will break structure. If we do, then I'll be looking for some buys. All right. But ultimately, that's everything I was looking at. Couple key things I was looking at for later tonight, I still have on my radar. But other than that, that pretty much is it. I will be looking, bear with me here. I will be looking potentially tomorrow for a potential entry. But other than that, that's it. I'm going to be keeping it nice and orderly until the ultimately the elections kind of die out. So with that in mind, I will see you guys later and trade safe. Enjoy.